For years, I went to the same club nearly every weekend. It wasn't just a place to get a drink and listen to music. It seemed like a second home. It was memorable because of the familiar people, fun times, and comforting routine. Every week, my little group of close friends, Chris, Liz, Hines, Kim, and my wife, Christy, gathered at our customary table to enjoy the evening. That evening seemed no different at first. The music was upbeat, laughter filled the air, and the talks flowed as usual. But something seemed odd. A pair of strangers sitting at a corner table piqued my interest. One of them sat quietly, sipping his drink, while the other wandered around, nervously speaking to various women. He was holding an envelope containing images or documents and exhibiting them to individuals, as if he were attempting to sell something. It was bizarre. I couldn't understand why the club staff hadn't stepped in. When I relayed it to my group, we all began laughing about what the person could be up to. We didn't take it very seriously at first. About 30 minutes later, the bolder man approached our table. What he said stunned me. He was looking for a woman to spend time with his pal. The way he spoke, he didn't seem to mind that all of the women at our table were with their boyfriends. The women laughed at his ludicrous request, but I became nervous. Christy then rose up and consented to leave with him, which surprised me. Christy went away with the man, leaving me standing there, absolutely surprised. I tempted to follow her. But before I could take a step, a big bouncer barred my path. I argued, telling him that she was my wife. But he wouldn't move. He claimed Christy told him she was leaving willingly and did not want me to interfere. I implored her to stop, turn around, and say anything. But she did not even look back. The embarrassment I experienced was awful. My companions were equally as surprised as I was, unsure what to say or do. I sank on the floor, tears flowing down my cheeks. How could she have done this to me? Wasn't I enough for her? My heart crushed, yet something inside altered. I wasn't only hurt. I was angry. I knew sitting in that club wouldn't change anything. I rose up, placed some money on the table for our drinks, and walked away without looking back. When I went outside, the cold air smacked me, and so did the reality of what had just occurred. My life had altered forever, but I would not let this be the end of my narrative. Subscribe to find out what happens next and how I decided to take control of my life. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. The drive home was a whirl of emotions, including fury, grief, and bewilderment. My mind raced with questions. Why would Christy do that? What did I do wrong? My phone rang while I was halfway home. That was her. For a brief time, hope sparked within me. Perhaps she realized her error and wished to return. But her words destroyed me yet again. She told me it wasn't about us. It's simply something I needed to do. She insisted it wouldn't harm our marriage because it was simply a one-time occurrence. I couldn't believe what I heard. The lady I loved and promised to spend my life with was asking me to understand and accept this treachery. I wanted to scream and cry, begging her to stop, but I didn't. Instead, I assured her I understand, albeit the significance of my words was far from what she expected. When I arrived home, I packed my belongings. Each suitcase I packed was a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. Christy and I had built a life together, but it suddenly seemed pointless. As I packed, the door opened and she entered. She stared at me, perplexed, and asked, "What are you doing?" Without hesitation, I told her I was leaving. "I'm filing for divorce." Her calm composure slipped, and she begged me to stay. She attempted to excuse her acts by claiming that they were motivated by curiosity and had no significance. But for me, it meant everything. She breached her vows, humiliated me in front of our friends, and now expects me to forgive her as if nothing happened. I informed her that I couldn't stay after what she had done. No amount of apologies could repair the damage she had caused. Her excuses only fueled my rage. She ignored my concerns about where they had taken her, stating that it didn't important and urging me to let it go. But how could I? She had gone with them, willingly humiliating me in front of everyone we knew. Despite her pleas, I packed the last of my belongings and walked away. The pain was excruciating, but remaining would have been worse. Chris and Hines, my friends, helped me get to my car. They didn't know what to say, but their presence was sufficient. As I drove away, I felt the weight of what had transpired come down on me. When I arrived home, I tried to make sense of everything. How could the lady I adored do this to me? I kept repeating the night in my mind, searching for answers that never arrived. Then the phone rang again. It was Christy. Her voice seemed calm and detached as she told me, "It's only this one time. I'll show you my love when it's over." Her comments stung more deeply than any betrayal. She honestly believed she could walk away, do anything she pleased, and return as if nothing had happened. But things had changed. That was when I understood I could not forgive her. The feelings for her had evolved into something else entirely. Something I couldn't yet define. But it was stronger than the anguish she had inflicted. I hung up the phone and sat silently. I stopped being sad for the first time. I was not even angry. I was determined. Christy was mistaken if she believed she could destroy me and get away with it. By the time I got to the apartment, I had made up my mind. I was not going to disappear quietly. I unpacked my baggage and started painstakingly packing everything that was mine. Each item reminded me of the life Christy and I had created together, a life she had abandoned. I did not rush. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions and feel the weight of what she had done. I was about halfway through packing when the door opened. Christy entered looking untidy, her makeup smudged, and her clothes wrinkled. She called out to me as if everything was fine. When she noticed me packing, her expression altered. "What are you doing now?" she asked. I said coldly, "I am moving out and filing for divorce." Her expression sank, and she raced toward me, attempting to stop me. She reached for the suitcase, but I yanked it away. "Don't touch me," I repeated firmly, my rage simmering just below the surface. She began crying, pleading with me to stay, claiming she had made a mistake and that it would not happen again. But I could not believe her. Not after all she had done. I asked her directly, "Did you sleep with both of them, or just one?" Her quiet was enough response. She attempted to rationalize it by calling it a moment of curiosity, a mistake she had to make. She had the audacity to say it didn't mean anything. I could not handle it anymore. I informed her just how her acts made me feel small, humiliated, and completely broken. Our wedding vows meant nothing to her now. Her sobs and apologies fell on deaf ears. I'd already made my decision, and there was no turning back. Her sobs became louder with each syllable I shouted. But I could not stop. I told her I might forgive her someday, but I would never forget. As I placed my belongings into the car, I experienced a peculiar sense of relief. I wasn't rushing away. I was taking the beginning steps toward recovering my life. The next morning I awoke in a motel room, extremely exhausted. I didn't know how fatigued I was until the adrenaline had worn off. By the time I checked, it was the clock. It was around midday. I knew I couldn't stay in the motel for long. My bank account was not designed for this type of spending, but I also couldn't return to the apartment. It was no longer home. I started considering my choices. Christy and I still had a few months on our lease, but there was no way I was staying there with her. We did not own much. Only 2 cars with payments, a little joint account, and some stuff I didn't care about. Nothing mattered to me now. What mattered was finding a means to proceed. That's when I decided to contact my friends. Chris and Liz had been married for several years, and they were the type of people who would always have my back. I called Chris to see if I might stay in their guest room for a time. Liz answered the phone and accepted quickly, but with one condition. "You can stay here, but I will not stop Christy. I am reaching out to you. She has been phoning everyone to attempt to find you." I agreed on her terms. Staying with them was my best option, and I needed the time to decide out what would happen next. Moving into their home that evening seemed unusual, but reassuring. They didn't press me to discuss what happened, and for the first time since that terrible night, I felt like I could breathe. Even though I was physically apart from Christy, her betrayal remained vivid in my memory. Every time I thought of her leaving with those men, it felt like a stab in my heart. But I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't allow her actions define me. I tried to adjust to my new schedule at Chris and Liz's residence. Regardless of how hard I tried, Christy's betrayal tormented me. She didn't stop calling, leaving voicemail after voicemail, each one loaded with apologies and requests for my return. I ignored each one. I wasn't prepared to hear her justifications. One evening, after a long day at work, I arrived home to find Christy and Liz in the living room. My heart fell. I had expressly told her that I did not want to see her. But there she stood, looking forlorn and full of regret. Liz apologized and stepped out to give us some space. Christy began talking before I could say anything. She urged me to reconsider, vowing she would do whatever it needed to make things right. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice breaking. "But it meant nothing. You're the only person I love." Her statements were empty. I told her plainly, "You humiliated me, you betrayed every promise you made when we were married. How am I supposed to trust you again?" she sobbed, stating that it was a moment of weakness and would never happen again. But I was not buying it. Her actions spoke louder than words ever could. I told her I needed time to think things through. But she persisted, attempting to persuade me that we could work this out. I finally stood up and went away. "You don't get to make decisions for me anymore," I stated forcefully. "If you truly care about me, you will give me the attention I require." As she left the house that night, I felt an odd combination of loss and relief. I still loved her. But the damage she'd done seemed irreversible. No matter how many tears she wept or how many apologies she made, I couldn't see a way forward. Days progressed into weeks. Christy's betrayal had a lasting impact on me. I tried to focus on work and reconstructing my life. But every quiet moment reminded me of that night. Then, one evening at the club, I noticed them. These were the same two men that had carried Christy away. They sat at a corner table, nonchalantly scanning the crowd, most likely hunting for their next target. I could not believe it. They were back, acting as if nothing had occurred, as if the misery they had caused me and perhaps countless others was insignificant. My rage boiled over. I must have been looking because Tasha, the bartender, noticed and asked what was wrong. When I informed her who they were, she didn't seem startled. "Those guys are regulars," she explained. "They're always seeking for ladies, particularly married ones." Hearing it hit me like a blow in the stomach. This was not a one-time experience for them. It was a pattern they preyed on women, destroying marriages and lives without hesitation. The more Tasha talked, the angrier I got. I couldn't allow them to get away with it, not again. I gathered my best pals, Chris, Hines, and a few more, and devised a strategy. We were not going to allow these fellows to continue their games. The next time they tried to perform their prank, we'd confront them and make sure they understood the repercussions. That night, while we watched them, my determination strengthened. It wasn't just about Christy anymore. It was about ensuring that no one else suffered as I had. It was about standing up to those who believed they could destroy lives and escape untouched. The opportunity to confront them arrived sooner than I anticipated. That same night, the two men approached a table with a group of women, laughing and joking as they attempted to pull their regular antics. My pals and I kept a tight eye on things, waiting for the perfect opportunity. When the males finally left the table and began to go toward the exit, we made our move. Chris, Hines, and a few more blocked their way as I moved forward. The shock on their faces was great. They recognized me right away, and their arrogant smiles swiftly changed to dread. "Do you think you can damage people's life and then carry on, as if nothing happened?" I said. My voice was steady but angry. "Not this time." They tried to deny everything, stating they hadn't done anything wrong, but their reasons were irrelevant to me. My pals grabbed them and took them outside into the parking lot. Away from the crowd, they struggled. But they couldn't compete with us. Once we had them trapped, I lay everything out. "You are predators. You target married women, wreck their marriages, and then walk away as if nothing happened. That will come to an end tonight." Their hubris dissipated as the gravity of the situation became clear. We hadn't laid a hand on them yet, but the fear in their eyes told me they recognized how severe the situation was. I made it clear to them that if they tried this again, the repercussions would be severe. My pals backed me up, and their mere presence was enough to drive the point home. As we let them go, I felt a surge of strength and control that I had not felt in weeks. For the first time since Christy's treachery, I felt like I was reclaiming my life. Watching those men slink away, I knew they'd never forget this night, or the lesson we'd taught them.